Hey, so is your holiday grief overlapping at school? So I want to know, are your kids struggling with grief? And if your kids are struggling with grief and it's showing up or overlapping in school, I want to give you two tips that are the most important to help your child feel less overwhelmed and increase their confidence in how to handle those moments when they are struggling with navigating their grief during this holiday season. For those that are here watching live, if you want to comment hashtag live, or if you're catching the replay, if you want to comment hashtag replay, that helps our videos stay in the news feed so that those who might want to catch it later will get a chance to see it. So for those of you who are new to the group, I am Dr. Annette Athey. I am a grief specialist and child development expert and have been in the field for over 20 years. I am wanting to talk to you about this grief and overwhelm. I have been talking with many parents over the last few weeks, online as well as in my private practice, where everybody keeps saying the same thing, how overwhelming it is right now with the holiday season. If you're a believer in the moon, the full moon was this just a few days ago. Those two things often increase our kids' behavior and that stress and overwhelm. And so I want to talk with you about two things that you can do very easy starting this week that are going to make a difference. So let me check the comments real quick. I see there's a Facebook user. For those of you who are new to the group, if you click on the link right above this video that says to give StreamYard access, that will allow me to see your name. If you do not want to do that, that's totally fine. Just know that in my StreamYard setting, you will show up as Facebook user and it says great info. Thank you. So thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. But if you are okay with your name showing up in StreamYard, if you will just click that button. Otherwise, when I go back to the Facebook group after the live, I will be able to see your name and comment in the group. So what I want to share with you, first of all, is I would love to hear what you have to say. Is grief showing up at school for your kiddo? Yes or no? And so if you want to comment in the chat and let me know, is grief showing up? Is there an overlap? And maybe your child is one that can hold it together at school, but by the end of the day, when they come home, because they have held it in all day, the behaviors are spilling out at home. So if you just want to comment yes or no in the chat, we're going to talk about the two things that you can do that are going to make a difference. They're going to make an impact. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is school. Have you prepared the school? Have you talked with your child's teacher? Have you talked with several of the teachers or the principal? Maybe you're from a smaller district and so everybody in town knows you, so everybody knows that your family has experienced this loss. But you might be in a bigger district. You might be in a bigger school system that doesn't know your kids on a personal level. They may know their name, but they don't know any personal details about them. And so I would encourage you to reach out to your child's school, touch base with them, and share with them what's happening in your household. And do they need to know every detail? No. But knowing that your child has experienced a loss, the teachers can be part of your village. They can be part of your team and checking in on your child. And the one thing that we know about the holiday season is if your school does any type of Christmas celebration or any type of let's make the parents a gift, guess what conversation is going to come up in your child's classroom? You guessed it. They're going to be talking about, let's make a present for mom and dad. Let's make a present for this important person. And if the teacher doesn't know that there's a loss in your household, most likely your child is going to experience that hit of grief, that moment where they're caught off guard of, now, do they share with their peers that they've lost their loved one? Do they share with the teacher? Do they announce it in front of the classroom? Do they pull the teacher aside? And depending on the personality of your child, they may be paralyzed. They may just be in complete fear and just stand there like a deer in the headlights and not be able to respond. So let me check the comments real quick. So yes, problems. So we have a parent on there who's having problems in school. Ray says, such a good idea. And Facebook user says, yes, they don't seem to be very tolerant despite the knowledge. And you are exactly right. Some schools, it's not because they don't care, it's because they don't understand, because they themselves don't have the knowledge of how to help your child. And for those of you in this group, and you have probably heard me say this before, when we lose a loved one, we become part of a club that we never asked to be a part of. Your child is part of a club they did not ask to be a part of. And if their teacher or their principal or the other supports in the school are not part of that club, if they have never experienced loss, they don't get it. That ignorance and truly lack of information, lack of understanding is where that comes from. It doesn't cross their mind that doing an activity for the parents could potentially be hurtful or harmful to our kid. And so that's where being your child's advocate comes into play. That's where your child needs you to step up and keep telling the teachers or even providing information. I have walked into several parent meetings where I bring the handouts, I bring the information and say, my child's struggling with grief. Here's how that's going to show up for my kid. Here's what this is going to be. And no, I'm not looking at this to be an excuse or permission for my child to not do what you're asking. What I'm asking for is for you to take a moment and see what's happening in his life or her life. To take a moment and understand that this is a really difficult time right now. So I see Ray says, sad to me that our teachers might not be prepared or educated. Absolutely, it is really sad, but unfortunately, that's not where their training lies. And thank goodness for you educating the teachers. Yes, I spend a lot of time in my particular school district and the school districts around educating teachers on how this loss may show up, what these behaviors that might look like anger or look like depression and withdrawal is actually grief. It's stemming from this loss. So the second way that you can help your child is to help prepare them. And when I say prepare them, what I am specifically asking you to do is role play. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with role playing, but basically you're going to practice. You're going to practice helping your child advocate for themselves. So it may be something as easy as, what do they say to the teacher who says, Okay, kids, we're going to make a Christmas ornament, one for mom and one for dad. And let's say that your child has lost their dad. You are going to help her with the words. How does she approach the teacher and say, my dad died and I don't have anybody to make this ornament for? What is she going to say? What would she feel comfortable in saying? Maybe she doesn't want to do it at all and she just makes them both and she comes home and is in tears. But maybe she wants to practice letting the teacher know, because it's probably on her mind whether she makes the ornament or not. The other option in role playing is we help them be more skilled with how to advocate for themselves. And this is important because this skill is a lifelong skill. We want our kids to be strong and independent and able to be assertive and ask for what they need. But that's not something somebody's born with. Now, don't get me wrong, some of my kids, I have one that she absolutely could advocate for herself all day long. That was not a skill that I needed to teach her. We just needed to fine tune on the words that she used. But I have 3 other kids that are more from they wouldn't want to take a chance to hurt somebody else's feelings, and so they just wouldn't say anything. They would just rather be the one who's hurting than to say something that they perceived as making somebody else feel bad. So they needed help with role playing. And so one of the things that we would do is we would practice. So we would say, okay, I'm going to be the teacher, and what would you say to me? And then we would talk about their words that they used. Was that a good use of their words? Is there a different way to say it? Or we practiced, what about the other kids in the class? So what if there were kids who showed up and said, oh, your mom died? Again, if my 6-year-old or my 10-year-old or my 15-year-old isn't prepared for that, guess what? They're going in their shell. They're going to go inward. They're going to hold on to those feelings, and they're not going to say anything. But if we've already role played and they already know that this parent loss or this significant person in their life that has died, that's not meaning that there's something wrong with them. And so helping them be able to say, yes, my mom died. Sometimes it's as easy as that, just teaching them to be confident with those words. Or maybe we teach them, yes, she did die, but that's not something I want to talk about. Or saying to them, that's really rude, what you just said. Those are okay things to teach your kiddos. It helps them advocate for themselves, and again, is a skill that they can take anywhere. It's a lifelong skill. So I would love to hear from those of you who are in the group watching. Which one do you feel like you need more practice on? Or which one would you like to do more of? Number 1, where you're preparing the school and advocating to the school about what your child is struggling with grief? Or is it number 2, preparing your child and practicing those role plays? Or is it both? Are these things that you have kept your grief because you're more of a private person and you haven't shared it with the school and you haven't talked with your child about how to handle these situations? I see Ray says role playing is a brilliant way to get better at communicating. Absolutely. Says my daughter's out of school, but I can see that number 2 would have been valuable for her. Yeah, it's something that yes, we're teaching specifically about how to use it in grief, but this is something teaching, advocating against bullying, against um, needing some extra help. Like they can use this skill anywhere about anything, but specifically about grief and how helpful that is. So, if you have questions or would like to help your child become more confident, but you're unsure how role playing might look for your age child or for your school district, you're not sure how to approach the teachers or what to say, I would love for you to comment #confident to join me on a free 15-minute grief to healing clarification call. And we can specifically talk about what role playing would look like for your child, what advocating to the school would look like, and some helpful things from my experience that may help address the teachers differently, where they may hear you differently, where we're not coming from a standpoint as a mom or a dad who's just protecting and trying to keep our child in this bubble that nothing bad happens. Sometimes teachers need to hear certain words, and I would love to give you those words and that context so that you can advocate for your child, so that you can help your child on their grief to healing journey, and making that a bit easier by helping them advocate for themselves. So I see Ray says in the workplace too. Absolutely, we can use this as adults and for our kids. And she says, sounds awesome. So I would love for you to comment #confident if you would love to join me on that call. And I hope to see you in the group.